Bill Van Amberg.
Hi, I'm Alicia Gildy, and thank you for watching CCTU.
In these unsettled times, this is part of how we're trying to make us all more connected than ever.
Join us every Friday at 11 a.m. for industry trends, tools, and updates.
Together, we're changing transportation for good. Well, hello again and welcome. Great to have you here with us for this August 14th edition of CCTU, the Clean Commercial Transportation Update, keeping us more connected than ever on industry progress. It's been a smoky end of the week here in our Southern California headquarters. Hope you are healthy and well wherever you're joining us from across the U.S. and across the world. I'm Bill Van Amberg, and along with my colleague Alicia Gildy, we're your hosts for CCTU for the next half hour. Bonnie Trowbridge is keeping us on the technical rails today for the webcast. Whitley Porter and Casey Okazaki are monitoring questions in chat. Please do share your questions. We'll respond as best we can and try to follow up offline with questions we can't get to answered live. We've got a great rundown today. Of course, we've got the regular review of news and trends, and then Alicia, a spotlight on a really big area of work for us.
That's right. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Well, the High Efficiency Truck Users Forum has been a very important opportunity to align needs and double up on technology investments to speed up our clean transportation industry for both the commercial and industry sectors.
Yeah, so we're going to take a deep dive spotlight into some of those segments, not only looking at some help we're providing to the Army on their strategic planning, but also looking at export power, connections to the grid. And Alicia, I think we're looking at cybersecurity today as well.
That's right. And Bill, I know we have a poll to get some feedback from our audience on where we see some opportunities for technology advancements for both military and the commercial sector. So our options are electric powertrains, connected vehicles and cybersecurity, grid integration and microgrids, and autonomous vehicles. Where do you see an area of opportunity for collaboration between the military and the commercial sector?
Well, it's interesting because we've lived this now for, boy, well over 20 years working with the military. And, you know, they use terms like silent watch because they like to be quiet and stealthy in the field. We call it idle reduction because we want to actually shut down for emissions purposes or run tools at a work site without the engine running. So there are dual uses. We just use different terms for it.
That's right. Good. Well, Bonnie, let's see those results. All right. For the most part, we're seeing electric powertrains has the top option here for 32%, followed by grid integration and microgrids. And then I would say after that, autonomous vehicles. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. Now, Bill, over to you for industry news.
Great. So let's get into it for this past week, you know, and we always have to be reminded of why we do the work that we do. And sadly, there has been some more developments going on with the pace of climate change. Canada, this past couple of weeks, has lost the last of its intact ice shelves. This is on Milne Ice Shelf, which is off Ellesmere Island. Big chunk of it broke off. More than 40% of its mass was lost into the Arctic. The Arctic actually has been heating at far faster rates than the rest of the globe for the last 20 years or more, and it's starting to show signs. And it's not just at the top of the world. If you go to the bottom of the world in Antarctica, what we're seeing is a great melting of the ice sheets. This has been tracked by European satellites. And recently, the Scripps Institute did a study of this ice shelf melt. And they found that it's not only has led to as much water as could fill the Grand Canyon to the top being shed away, but it's also opened up the land-based ice to slide into the ocean and increase the height of our seas. So troubling news and studies there for the week. But the work to try to mitigate and change that direction goes on. And I think it's really exciting. This past week, BYD has announced that they've actually achieved 13 million e-bus miles in the United States. That's a really big milestone when you think about it. That's 520 trips around the globe with an electric bus. It's also reduced 3.3 million gallons of diesel that did not need to be used. Nikola has made a big announcement this past week, a new e-truck that they're doing for refuse and also for recycling trucks. This is a partnership with Republic Services, which is the second biggest service provider in that area. They're talking about it starting with about 2,500 of these trucks that could be delivered starting in 2023. Orange EV has also teamed up with Firefly Transport Services. They have announced a tandem axle yard tractor. Now, this is important because instead of the single axle, which is doing really most of the work, the double axle allows them to drive on public streets and avoid weight restrictions that you often find on public streets. So that's actually a pretty important breakthrough. We're also seeing this past week news of a new electric bus factory, a manufacturing plant opening for the first time in the continent of Africa. And that's really good news. One of the most polluted cities in the world is in Africa. It's Kampala, Uganda. And this is where the factory will be based. It's opening up, creating jobs, but it will also, starting next year, produce buses that will be used by all of the services. It is a government-owned enterprise, but they are getting those buses out into use in Kampala. Finally, today, really good news about some work going on in the U.S. Army. It's been looking at its entire vehicle fleet and decided that it needs to really review and revise its strategy for using electrified strategies, technologies, and powertrains in those vehicles. It's the Army Futures and Concept Center that's developing this strategy, and it's very exciting because it could lead to much bigger uptake of those technologies into military vehicles over the next 10 to 20 years. And I will say that our HTEF team, our High Efficiency Truck Users Forum, has been working with Futures Command on this. We're going to be hearing from members of Future Command over the next couple of weeks describing that work. And today we've got some exciting new look at what HTEF is doing in addition to that. Alicia, why don't you move to our next segment?
Bill, the High Efficiency Truck Users Forum has been an excellent opportunity for us to collaborate with the Army for almost 20 years now on important initiatives to advance innovative technologies and solutions. And today we have our Midwest Regional Director, Maureen Marshall, who's going to help lead in a discussion to talk about some of the new activities that we're involved in addition to opportunities to advance electric truck technologies, but also looking at connected and autonomous vehicles, microgrids, and cybersecurity. Maureen, always a pleasure to have you on our program. Thank you so much for joining us and looking forward to hearing your update on what's new for HTEF.
Oh, great, and thank you, Alicia. And again, I guess HTEF really set up, the industry for the success that Bill showcases and you showcase each week. This year marks our 20th anniversary, bringing the military and commercial industry partners together in collaboration. And though the HTEF acronym remains the same, we've evolved with the technology, right? So we started in 2000 with the Hybrid Electric Trucks Users Forum, and we've gone into the Hybrid Truck Users Forum, and now we have evolved into the High Efficiency Truck Users Forum, really focusing on those high efficiency powertrains, meeting the dual use technologies of both industry and the commercial market. So today we're assisting the Army's Futures Command and the Army's Futures Concept Centers we discussed, really, moving that one step forward into vehicle electrification with the Army. We're looking at expanding a community of interests around electrification through outreach and through real-world deployments. We want to learn, synchronize, innovate, and really advance the technology forward. And in the coming weeks, as Bill mentioned, we will learn more when Army Futures Command Major Ressler will join us. So we're really looking forward to that. We're also leading some great work groups focused on microgrid and export power, really giving the military the power they need to move forward, both in home base and out in forward operations. We're also working to increase cybersecurity, really ensuring our national security and removing all vulnerabilities so that the warfighter can provide us all the national security and protection we need moving forward. So with that, I'm really excited today to introduce and welcome Jagmeet Kangura. Jagmeet comes to us from Black & Veatch. She's a microgrid solutions lead, and it is so exciting to have you here today giving your background, and you're one of the leading experts in this area. And what I found was interesting to learn is that you started your career supporting the U.S. Navy in the utilities division, really looking at renewable energy solutions for the military. Is that correct?
Actually, I worked for the Navy for a year at NAFAC in DC about 4 years ago to help them look at resiliency and how microgrids could help them improve resiliency at the bases across the world.
That's great. That's great. So what I would like to do is talk about the military a little bit. You know, the U.S. Department of Defense is the single largest consumer of petroleum around the world, and they carry their fuel with them. And microgrids have the ability to provide an opportunity of saving the military $8 to $20 billion a year in savings. The military requires this power to meet their daily missions, which includes power that is acquired from the vehicle, which we call export power, so that they can run all their auxiliary systems really off of that electrical backbone. So, Jagmeet, what I would like to ask you, you know, you're involved heavily with our HTUF working group. You know, what can the military facilities learn from commercial microgrids, especially concerning vehicle introduction?
I would say my feeling is that I think the commercial industry can probably learn a lot more from the military, just because they have been at the forefront of building very resilient, flexible power in very harsh conditions. So a lot better than the conditions typically a commercial a customer would have to deal with. Definitely the cybersecurity, as you'll discuss later on, but also just being able to put together facilities really fast and be really tactile and very responsive to meet the needs that they have out in the forward deployments that they have.
Yeah. The military definitely needs to move, shoot, and communicate. So it's really important there.
Correct. And if they design equipment to meet their safety requirement, that's definitely going to be above and beyond what commercial industry needs. So if they can make and fabricate things to meet their security needs, we can be very sure that they will work behind the meter in a residential building. They'll work behind the meter at a commercial building, because those safety tests have already been done for, again, much harsher conditions than what we would need on our regular uses.
Jagmeet, so great to have you. And the opportunity to work in a working group is so important, because you're bringing all these different perspectives and experiences and skill sets to the table to evaluate important solutions to advance technology and solutions. Would like to hear from you. Where do you think is the best opportunity through this Export Power working group? What will be the best value of that working group effort?
I think right now, at least in the commercial space, one of the biggest barriers to using vehicles for export power are the availability of vehicles that can do bidirectional power flows, as well as chargers. So I think using maybe the equipment that has worked for the military to provide that capability, but that could also be used for utility connected equipment, would be very useful to learn the lessons. Traditional utilities, that's where we'd have to operate, as we learn from the military. Like, their goal is to provide safe and reliable power. So they have to keep the grid very safe. So since safety is also important for the military, I think some of the lessons we learn on how to operating and exporting power in the military setting could be used to by the utilities to figure out how do we operate these type of systems on a grid and then keep the grid safe and reliable. Again, that's one of their foremost responsibilities as a service provider.
Yeah, thank you for that. And, going along, and I see this important slide up on operational resiliency, in current times, resiliency, certainly as we're up against climate change, and certainly I can imagine in the situations where we have troops in the field and utilizing advanced technologies, being able to make sure that we have the power needs available to support an electric fleet, for example. Talk to us a little bit about where you see the opportunities for resiliency and how we can be making improvements there to make sure that we're ready and robust in the field.
I'm sorry, so ready and robust for the military or for commercial use?
For both.
For both, okay. I think I would say for commercial use, so one of the issues that I kind of look at all the time for some of these projects I've done for CalSTART is that as we move over to transportation being electrified for fleets, there's also this like big resiliency requirement that's typically hard to really address because of the need for a lot of infrastructure and a lot of batteries. So like 30 gallons of diesel is about 1 megawatt hour battery. So if you look like a pickup truck that has a full tank equals 1 megawatt hour battery. So you need a lot of power sitting available to be able to charge these trucks if there's an outage, which is becoming more and more likely given the fires that we have in California. So there's definitely like a need there for us to be much more ready for responding and also be able to continue operation in case there's an outage, same as the military. One of the advantages that we have in the commercial space is that we can get power from the grid, which can be a little bit more difficult, I think more challenging in the military, where sometimes they actually have to bring their generators. It's not as if they have the grid always available to give them the power. Sometimes they do, but often you can imagine in these places, if they're in a rural area, the grid actually might not meet the standard requirement for the power quality that the military needs. So for them, microgrids can serve as a way to even improve the power quality that they get, in addition to letting them operate off the grid if the grid is not available.
Great. Thank you so much, Jagmeet. And Maureen, thank you so much. Ladies, please stay with us because we're going to hopefully bring in some questions from our audience. But I'd like to turn it over to Bill, who's going to be bringing in another one of our HTUF partners on the CalSTART team to talk about other activities that we're focusing on for HTUF.
Yeah, that's right, Alicia. Export power microgrids are a huge area of interconnect, and people kind of really understand that in the industry side. But the next topic is not as obvious for people, and yet maybe it's even more critical to address, and that's cybersecurity. We're going to bring in Steve Sokolsky from his Madison, Wisconsin office. He's our HTUF program manager, and he's really been working this issue with industry and other partners for the last several years. He's going to give us at least a setup and then bring in our guest. Steve, what's the real background with cybersecurity?
Well, Bill, people ask us, why are you getting involved in cybersecurity? What relation does it have to do with either vehicle electrification or higher efficiency vehicles? And it's an excellent question, but we really see cybersecurity as an enabler for some of these advancements, especially around electrification. And there are certain areas, you see in the green boxes, a couple areas that really affect the way that some of these technologies are going to be integrated on vehicles and then deployed, especially when you're talking about software assurance and the one on the far right, counterfeit components. This idea of the supply chain being secure and that parts that get added to vehicles are cyber free is really an important point, and it's really something that's I think overlooked by some of the people who are looking at some of these advanced electrification technologies and efficiency technologies. So that's why we're looking at it. Our partners at the Ground Vehicle Systems Center in the Army are very focused on this area, and they've asked us to really engage industry in what we can do to bring industry practice and knowledge to their operations, and how we can collaborate to work to get better cybersecurity and assurance in that area.
So you have a guest I think we wanted to bring on and talk about this, who's really been helping us take a deeper look into the cybersecurity challenge.
Exactly. So I'm very happy that we're joined today by Mike Dudzik. Mike is the president of IQM Research Institute in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Mike has been a long time practitioner in this area. He is a former Reserve Air Force general, and he has been working in technology areas for not only the Ground Vehicle Systems Center, but for the Office of the Secretary of Defense. And he's very connected on what their needs are and where they see the vulnerability. So Mike, thank you really very much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to work with you. Could you give me just, what do you think the biggest vulnerabilities are when we're talking both, when the vehicles become involved in both the military and the commercial? Where do you think those vulnerability overlaps are?
Well, thanks, Steve. It's great to be with you today. And cybersecurity and vehicle technologies has been an ongoing focus area, both in the industry as well as in the DoD now for, gosh, it's at least been almost a decade as these groups have looked at the areas. Typically today, when you look at a vehicle system, you've got three components that support that vehicle. Part of it is the platform itself, the different ECUs and things that coordinate the vehicle's operation. The second is layered types of technologies like communication, navigation, other types of infotainment on commercial vehicles come to bear. And in the trucking industry, you have ELDs, maintenance things that are brought on in addition to what the OEM has put onto the platform. And then finally, you have layers of operational technology in the back office that support the vehicle or the driver or the operation it's focused on. And this really applies generically both on the DoD side, but clearly on the commercial side. And when you look today at the issues, they're all about risks. Of course, in the DoD, you have the issue of nation state type of attack that you have to be concerned about. And we've all seen these in the paper or various forms about different nation states attacking using cyber type of operations. But clearly what's rising more in the vehicle community today is the risks brought on that are attacked essentially by economic exploitation, ransomware. And so for an OEM, it's very important that they protect their systems, because obviously if a particular type of vehicle or brand of vehicle were susceptible, the loss, the economic loss, not just to the brand equity, but also to the performance of those vehicles used in different areas would be enormous. So there's a lot more attention that's going on. For the American Trucking Association, they've adopted CyberWatch, which reports on different activities that are happening, especially in ransomware. The FBI puts out reports now on transportation, which is very important to address. And of course, you know, when you look at the functions on the vehicles themselves, more and more requirements for digitization are happening today on the platforms, which makes this very important. And it speaks to that slide that you put forth about looking at cyber in several areas. Of course, the design factor in the hardware is very crucial, but the software is also now becoming a big issue as we move to more autonomous operations with the platforms themselves. So going from an older platform, which may have had 1 to 2 million lines of code, if you go to an autonomous platform, say SAE level 4 or 5, you're looking at hundreds of millions of lines of code. So therefore, issues with malware become very important for future operations of platforms, either commercial or military itself. The way some of the activities are undergoing right now in that regard is standards. And it's hard because if you look at the military, they tend to be very prescriptive in their use of specifications to buy a platform. But oftentimes their technology falls back behind where commercial industry has been. So commercial industry relies on standards such as SAE or IEEE standards to be able to produce a platform that they want to have. And of course, Department of Transportation, especially in Class 6, 7, and 8 platforms, has a lot of oversight there for regulatory authority. So you have many bodies that are coming together, but clearly the problem between DoD and commercial platforms are very much the same because they rely pretty much on the same vendor base out there. So as a result, you have to be involved with that vendor base. Now, some of the issues coming forward there really are the movement of technology solutions. So, you know, while cyber is very active and people are working on protective methods, it's the transition or translation of those new concepts into the commercial fleets and getting the OEMs to essentially add those into the vehicles as they do in, say, security by design practices. Going back and trying to retrofit is much harder. But if you look at today's fleets, typically for an over-the-road Class 8 trucking operation, they're replacing their vehicles every 3 to 5 years or at some mileage limit out there at 400,000 miles. So they have the opportunity to bring in new technologies as their customers so are interested in that.
All right. Hey, Mike, thanks on that. And let's bring in our past panelist. And also, we're getting a lot of really good, interesting audience and attendee questions. Real quick for you, this can happen with any vehicle. Are electric vehicles more at risk? Do they create a different level of challenge? What would be your observation there?
That's a very good question. As we move into more EV systems, I think the nature of the risk changes. Certainly, you're plugging into the grid for that vehicle. So protecting the grid now becomes very important of moving malware across that grid interface into the vehicle or vice versa. At the same time, electric vehicles have a little bit different control systems. So again, they depend a lot more on the ECUs and the protection that's built in there. So this is going to be a challenge going forward. And of course, one of the limiting factors right now in the vehicle cyber area is the workforce. That's going to take a new type of workforce coming out. And all of the OEMs are struggling to find individuals who have that level of experience, not just in simple type of software systems that are used today on the web, but very dedicated into the embedded processor areas.
Hey, so thanks, Mike. And Jagmeet, if you're still on with us, there is an interesting question circling back to the issue of microgrids. And I think the question is, the military has been doing a lot of work to actually allow any kind of connection to be able to get into and create or support a microgrid. Is that bringing standards into the commercial world so we can get more of a plug and play approach? Because right now it's a very unique setup on the commercial side about how to set up energy storage, what kind of vehicles could connect, what could connect into the grid. Are we seeing standards come out in the commercial side for that?
I think the standards are still kind of being worked through the process, so we don't have any standards yet available. So like even the communications that typically used in the energy space for inverters is like Modbus, whereas different sorts of communications typically used for vehicles. So there's kind of convergence of even how the communication needs to work for the different things you can put on a microgrid. Typically when we have installed microgrids, so we designed and built one at Miramar, which is a naval station in Southern California. We picked the different piece of equipment that went into the system, and there's a SCADA system in place and complex communications that make it all possible. So it's still kind of designed for that use, taking into account for that equipment. I think one of the challenges that we typically have is when you're trying to make things compatible with what's existing with new technology, you will always have those kind of plug and play issues. So if you're starting off on, say, a new system, you have a lot more flexibility to make sure that things can operate well together. So say if you have like a fleet of buses in an area that you want to use for emergency response, you could make it that maybe the fire station or the police station has the port so the bus can come there, they could plug right in, but you have to think and plan through that at the very beginning so that system is in place. So I think it'll take some time so that you have that interoperability, and it'll be built in over time.
Great, thank you, Jagmeet.
Great.
Alicia,
Well,
yeah.
oh.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, how are we on time? And you were answering me.
Oh, well, this has been an awesome speaker lineup, and really excited about HTUF and where it's going, and the opportunity to continue to evaluate ways in which we can help accelerate technology with the military, as well as how it complements all the great work we're doing in the commercial sector. So thank you so much, team, for that great update, and our wonderful guests that joined us today. We do have some webinars coming up that we would like to bring everyone's attention to. So if we can bring up that slide. So yes, on August 20th, we're going to have our microgrids monthly working group meeting. So please check out information on attending that, as well as on August 28th, we are going to have that interview with Major Ryan Wessler with Army Futures to talk about this great fleet electrification study that we're working with them on. And then September 17th, HTUF's monthly webinar on vehicle cybersecurity. And then lastly, as we mentioned, going on 20 years now working on HTUF, we're going to be having our anniversary where we're going to be talking about the origins of HTUF, our rationale, successes, and how we are moving forward. Back over to you, Bill.
All right, thanks, Alicia. I'm really excited about that interview with Major Wessler and the Futures Command. The Army really seems to be taking some big steps forward on that, and that's exciting. We've been working with them for 20 years, as you well noted. Well, we've reached almost our full time on the program. I will give you a reminder that this webcast is available, and we post it to our website by each following Monday. So if you missed a segment or you want to review some of the comments, please do. Please also follow our Twitter account and retweet. Give us your thoughts at CalSTART Update. Next week, we've got an exciting program theme in place. We'll shine a light on new breakthroughs in innovative mobility. We're going to talk about the Clean Mobility Options Program here in California. We'll discuss some exciting opportunities with mobility hubs in general, and some ways to use innovative mobility to help communities and others cope with pandemic and possible our new normal. Plus, we'll of course have all the latest news, tools, and trends next week. For now, though, that's all for this week's edition of CCTU. For Alicia Gildy and our great clean commercial transportation team here at CalSTART, I'm Bill Van Amberg. Be safe, stay healthy, please take care of yourself and take care of others. And remember, be more connected than ever. Make Fridays your CCTU day. We'll be right here next week at this same time to see you. Join us then. Until then, goodbye.